I told her my blood was turning against me. I told her I was dying. In truth, I was only dying to live as myself. Her voice trembled through the phone, fragile and full of disbelief. "What are you saying? Blood cancer?" she whispered, like if she said it too loudly, it would become real. I stood by the window of my rented apartment abroad, watching rain slide down the glass. My reflection looked sick enough to be believed. Dark circles, tired eyes, a face aged more by lies than time. I took a slow breath and said softly, "Yes, the doctors say it's spreading fast. I didn't want to tell you, but you deserve to know." There was silence. Then the sound of her sobbing broke through the line. Quiet at first, then uncontrolled. I closed my eyes. Each tear she shed on the other end felt like a drop of acid on my skin. I had built this lie carefully, word by word, rehearsed like a cruel play. Because truth, the real truth, was something she would never understand. I was a 35-year-old bodybuilder. The kind of man people called strong, fearless, a real man. But beneath the muscles, behind the protein shakes and competitions, I was a boy still hiding from himself. A boy who had loved another boy once and had been told that love was wrong. My family had been proud of me. Their son, the champion, the man everyone respected. My mother used to say, "You'll make some lucky girl very happy one day." And when I said I didn't want to marry, my father's eyes hardened. "It's not about what you want," he said. "It's about what's right." So they found her, a kind, gentle woman with soft eyes and a smile that didn't know the storms I carried inside. On our wedding night, she sat beside me, shy and trembling. And I sat there too, staring at the floor, wishing I could disappear. She thought I was nervous. She thought it was love. I thought it was the beginning of a sentence I could never finish. Days passed, weeks, months. I avoided her gaze, her touch, her warmth. I built walls made of excuses, work, stress, fatigue. And when she finally asked what was wrong, I gave her my first lie. "My body doesn't work," I said quietly. "Something's wrong with me. Physically." She believed me, or maybe she wanted to. Her eyes filled with sympathy, not anger. She told me we would go to doctors, we would fix it together, but I didn't want to be fixed. I wasn't broken. I just didn't belong to her. It wasn't my body that failed. It was my heart. It didn't beat for her. It never would. Every night I would lie beside her, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the face of someone else. The boy I once loved when I was 17. His laughter still echoed somewhere deep in me. I had buried him under years of denial and discipline. But he was still there, alive in my memories, waiting. And the longer I pretended, the sicker I became. Not in body, but in spirit. People say bodybuilding makes you strong, but I had never felt weaker. The gym was my hiding place, matta, the one place I could drown my thoughts in sweat and steel. Every rep, every weight, every breath was a punishment for what I couldn't say out loud. I sculpted my body into armor, hoping no one would see how fragile the soul inside it really was. And yet, every time I looked in the mirror, I saw him. The 17-year-old boy who had held my hand behind the school gym, whispering that love shouldn't feel like sin. The boy who moved away before we could say goodbye. The boy I'd never stopped loving. Years later, standing in a foreign country, phone pressed to my ear, I realized what all my strength had been for. Not to build myself up, but to keep myself from breaking. My wife's sobs faded into tired silence. "I'll come to you," she said finally. "I'll stay by your side. We'll fight this together." My throat tightened. She was innocent, kind. She didn't deserve this lie, but neither did I deserve the cage I had been living in. I wanted to tell her everything, that I wasn't sick, that I wasn't broken, that I had never been hers to love. But the words stayed trapped behind my teeth, because if I told her the truth, I would destroy everything she believed about me, so I let the lie breathe. I let it live between us like an invisible wall. And as I hung up the phone, I felt both relief and shame wash over me. This wasn't about running away from her. It wasn't about cruelty or cowardice. This lie wasn't about escaping her. It was about returning to him. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and everyone had something to say. Our street smelled of rain and dust, of chai from the tea shop on the corner and iron from the small gym that sat near the old market. That gym was where everything began. I was 16 when I first started going there. I was awkward, quiet, always trying to please people. My father, my coaches, the neighbors who said he's a strong boy just like his father. But I wasn't strong. Not inside. That was where I met him. Armin. He was 17, taller, leaner, with a smile that could melt even the roughest day. He was one of those boys who didn't care about what others thought. The kind who laughed too loud and dreamed too much for a small town like ours. I still remember the first time he spoke to me. I was struggling to lift a barbell, my hands shaking, my breath unsteady. He walked over, grinning. "Too heavy?" he teased. I frowned, pretending not to care. "Just warming up," he chuckled. "Then you better warm up slower or you'll break yourself before you start." That was how it began. The kind of friendship that didn't make sense to others but made the world make sense to me. We trained together, ate together, spent hours sitting by the canal after sunset, talking about nothing and everything. He used to call me the serious one. I called him the idiot. But when he smiled, something fluttered inside me, something I didn't have a name for back then. There were small moments that still haunt me. The way his hand brushed against mine when he handed me the dumbbell. The time he wiped the sweat from my forehead with his towel and laughed when I blushed. The night we sat on the rooftop, the sky full of stars, and he said, "You ever think we're made wrong? Like the world wants us to be something else?" I didn't answer then. I didn't know how. But I wanted to tell him, no, we're made right. It's the world that's wrong. One evening after a long workout, we stayed late in the gym. The air smelled of sweat and chalk. The lights were dim and we were both exhausted. He leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. "You know," he said, "I like being here with you. It's different." Something in his tone made me look up. His eyes held mine for longer than they should have. The silence stretched. I don't know who moved first. Maybe both of us. But suddenly he was close enough that I could feel his breath against my skin. My heart thundered in my chest, and then his hand brushed mine again, this time deliberately. Neither of us said a word. But that moment, that quiet electric second, became the heartbeat of my youth. It didn't last long. Rumors started spreading. Someone had seen us together after hours. Someone said we were too close. In a town like ours, whispers spread faster than fire. Parents started warning their sons not to spend time with us. My father heard, and I still remember the slap that followed. "What are people saying about you?" he shouted. "You're bringing shame on us." I tried to explain, but words fell apart before they reached my mouth. A week later, Armin's family moved away. No goodbyes. No explanation. Just gone. I remember standing in front of his empty house, feeling like someone had taken the ground from under me. I found a note taped to the gate. 2 words written in his messy handwriting. "Stay strong." For years, I tried to forget. I drowned myself in silence and sweat. I went back to the gym, trained harder, heavier, longer. I thought if I built enough muscle, maybe I could bury whatever was left of that boy inside me. That's how bodybuilding became my escape, or my punishment. Each rep, each curl, each flex was my way of saying I'm not weak. I'm not wrong. But deep down, I knew exactly why I was doing it. I wasn't trying to become strong. I was trying to erase softness. His softness. My own. When I started competing, my family's pride returned. They called me a symbol of strength. My father introduced me to people as my champion son. My mother would smile and say, "Now you just need a wife." Every time she said it, a part of me withered. But I smiled anyway. I played the part they wrote for me. Years passed, but the emptiness didn't. Sometimes late at night, I'd scroll through old social media accounts searching his name. I found an old profile once. His picture blurry, but those same eyes still there. He was older, broader, but still had that same calm defiance. He looked happy. I wanted to message him. I typed 100 words, then deleted them all. What could I even say? "Hey, remember me?" The boy who never said goodbye. Instead, I saved the picture. I told myself it was nothing. Just nostalgia. But every night before I slept, I'd look at it once, like checking that some part of me still existed. There were nights I'd wake up from dreams that felt too real, his laughter echoing through my head, his hand brushing mine again. And for a few seconds before the world came back, I'd believe he was still near. But morning always arrived with silence, the kind that filled every corner of the house, every muscle in my body. I became everything the world wanted. Disciplined, masculine, admired. But none of it felt like me. My body grew stronger, my heart weaker. Sometimes I'd catch people staring at me in the gym, envy in their eyes. They saw strength, confidence, power. If only they knew that behind the sculpted chest and perfect form lived a man still chasing the ghost of a boy he once loved. The trophies didn't shine as bright as I thought they would. The applause never filled the silence inside me. And every flex, every mirror pose felt like a lie rehearsed too well. I wasn't the man they saw. I was the boy I lost, still standing by that gym, still waiting for a hand that once brushed mine. I built muscles to hide my heart. But the weight of lies was heavier than any barbell. The wedding was beautiful, or at least that's what everyone said. The hall glittered with lights, laughter filled the air, and my mother's eyes shone with pride. I stood beside my new wife, smiling for photographs, holding her hand as if it were something precious. It should have been the happiest day of my life. But all I felt was the quiet panic of a man stepping into a prison he had built himself. She was kind. I'll never deny that. Her name was Hina, and she had a voice like calm water, gentle, patient, endlessly forgiving. She didn't deserve the version of me that stood before her, polite, distant, already half gone. The first few months after our marriage were a careful performance. She would wake early, make breakfast, wait for me to eat. I'd thank her with a polite smile, say I had to leave for the gym or work, and disappear until late. At night, I'd pretend to be tired. Long day, too much training. She'd nod, trying to understand, but her eyes would follow me, searching for something that wasn't there. Sometimes she'd reach out, trying to close the distance. A hand on my arm, a soft word, a laugh that lingered too long. I'd stiffen, pretending not to notice. She thought I was shy. She didn't know I was terrified. The truth was, I didn't know how to be her husband. I didn't know how to give her what she wanted. Not affection, not intimacy, not the kind of warmth that comes from wanting someone. I could only give her silence and space, which she mistook for patience. As weeks turned into months, her smiles began to fade. One night, as we sat across from each other at dinner, she asked quietly, "Did I do something wrong?" I looked up, startled. "No," I said quickly. "It's not you. It's just my health. My hormones are off. I've been under stress." The excuses tumbled out too easily, rehearsed and hollow. She bit her lip and nodded. "You're always tired," she whispered. "You barely talk to me anymore. I don't know how to reach you." I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to say, "You can't reach me because I'm not where you think I am." But I couldn't. Instead, I said, "Give me time. I'll get better." But time didn't heal us. It only widened the distance. I started spending more nights at the gym. The clang of weights became my lullaby, the mirror my only companion. I watched my reflection and wondered if she hated me yet, or worse, pitied me. She began to notice the patterns, the late nights, the cold silences, the moments when she reached for my hand and I found a way to move. I could feel her confusion harden into hurt. There were fights, quiet ones, the kind that leave no scars but break something deeper. "I don't understand you," she said once, tears trembling in her eyes. "You're here, but you're not with me. You smile, but it never reaches your eyes. What are you hiding from me?" I stayed silent. I didn't have the courage to answer. One night, she broke down completely. We were in our bedroom, the air heavy with the silence between us. She turned to me suddenly and asked, "Do you even love me?" It was such a simple question, one that any husband could answer without thinking. But I couldn't. My mouth opened, then closed again. She waited, seconds, minutes, her eyes pleading for something, anything. But all I could offer was silence. That silence was my answer. She looked away, wiping her tears with trembling hands. "I don't know what I did to deserve this," she whispered. "You're here with me, but I've never felt so alone." After she fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her words echoing in my head. The guilt pressed against my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. She was an innocent caught in a lie I never meant to live. I thought about telling her everything, about Armin, about the years of hiding, about the truth of who I really was. But I could already see the faces of my parents, the whispers of our relatives, the pity, the disgust. I imagined her shame, her confusion, her heart breaking, and I realized something cruel. Truth might set me free, but it would destroy her. The next morning, I made a decision that felt both cowardly and merciful. I told her I needed to travel abroad for treatment, a medical issue I'd been ignoring. She looked at me with worry and confusion, but she didn't question it. "If it'll help, go," she said softly. "I'll pray for you." I nodded, unable to meet her eyes. That was the beginning of the end. I told my family I was unwell, that doctors abroad might be able to help. Everyone believed me. Maybe because lies sound truer when they protect a reputation. As I packed my bags, she stood at the door, holding a scarf I'd forgotten. "Take care of yourself," she said. Her voice broke halfway through and I saw the tears she was trying to hide. I almost told her the truth right there. I almost said, "I'm not sick, just lost." But instead I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'll come back better." She smiled weakly, believing me. And I hated myself for letting her. As the plane took off, I stared out the window, my reflection caught in the glass. I should have felt free, but all I felt was guilt pressing against the wings of the plane, trying to pull me back. Still beneath the shame, there was a flicker of something else. Relief. Because somewhere far away, Armin was still out there, and maybe, just maybe, I could find him again. That night, in a foreign city full of strangers, I sat in my hotel room, staring at my phone, rehearsing the next lie. The one that would finally set me free. I would tell her that the doctors had found something worse, something terminal. It wasn't kindness. It was cowardice dressed as mercy. But in that moment, I convinced myself it was the only way. If truth was going to destroy her, I chose lies to save her, and myself. When the plane touched down, the first thing I felt was silence. Not the polite kind I'd lived in for years, but the real kind. Heavy and freeing at the same time. Outside the window, the foreign city glowed beneath a dull evening sky. I sat there for a moment, staring at the lights, breathing in a version of air that didn't know my name. I told everyone back home that I was here for treatment. A few sympathetic relatives messaged. My mother sent long voice notes about prayer and patience, and my wife. She called every night. I answered when I could. I told her stories of fake hospitals and imaginary doctors. I spoke softly, rehearsing every word like a script. But in the spaces between those calls, I was someone else entirely. The first few days, I wandered through the city, tall buildings, unfamiliar faces, languages I didn't understand. No one knew me here. No one cared. For the first time, I didn't have to keep my shoulders squared or my smile practiced. I could breathe without pretending to be perfect. At night, when the streets quieted, I'd sit by the window of my small apartment scrolling through old memories. It was on one of those nights that I saw him again, Arman. It was an accident, or maybe fate. I was aimlessly browsing social media, half asleep when his name appeared on a people you may know list. My thumb froze. I stared at the screen as if it had summoned a ghost. He looked older, of course. His jawline was sharper, his hair shorter, a faint beard tracing his face. But his eyes, those same defiant, laughing eyes, and hadn't changed. My heart started racing, a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. I clicked on his profile. My hands trembled. The pictures showed a quiet life, a small apartment, a motorbike, a few photos of sunsets and books. He didn't look like the restless boy I once knew. He looked like a man who had learned to live with the world's silence. I wanted to message him right away, but fear held me still. What if he didn't remember me? What if he had moved on, married, changed? I stared at the blinking cursor for what felt like hours before finally typing, "Hey, it's been a long time. Do you remember me?" I hit send before I could change my mind. Then I waited. An hour later, the screen lit up. Of course I do. How could I forget? Something inside me cracked open. We started slow, short messages at first. Polite, careful, almost formal. How have you been? Where are you living now? Do you still go to the gym? Each reply felt like peeling back a layer of time. Then came the deeper questions. Did you ever think about me? All the time, I wrote. And you? Every day, he said. Even when I tried not to. That night we talked until sunrise, about our childhood, about the rumors, about the silence that came after. I told him about the life I built, the competitions, the marriage, the lies. He didn't judge. He just listened. I always knew you'd have to pretend, he said, but I hoped you'd find your way out someday. A week later we met. It was a small cafe near the harbor, quiet and warm, the kind of place where no one stares too long. I got there early, sitting by the window, my hands trembling as I stirred coffee I couldn't taste. Then he walked in. For a second, the world stopped. The noise faded, the air stilled. He wore a black jacket and that same lopsided smile that had haunted me for years. When our eyes met, every year of separation vanished. He approached slowly, as if afraid that getting too close might break the illusion. "Hey," he said softly. I stood, unable to speak. We stared at each other, both smiling, both trying not to. Finally, he reached out and hugged me. A tentative, quiet hug, but one that said everything words couldn't. I felt his heartbeat against mine, and something in me, something buried for years, finally exhaled. We sat for hours, talking like we used to, laughter spilling between memories. He told me about his life, working as a trainer, living alone, keeping to himself. He hadn't found love again, he said. It's hard to love when the first time breaks you so cleanly. I wanted to tell him the same, that no matter what I'd built, I'd never been whole without him. But instead I said, "You look good." He laughed, rolling his eyes. "You don't. You look like a man who's been running too long." He was right. We walked along the harbor that evening, the wind tugging at our sleeves. He told me he'd seen the news of my bodybuilding wins years ago, and he'd felt proud, but also sad. "You look strong," he said, "but not happy." I told him I wasn't. I told him about my marriage, my lies, my fake illness. He stopped walking, staring at me for a long moment. "Why would you do that?" he asked quietly. "Because I couldn't tell the truth," I said. "Not to her. Not to them. I've lived my whole life pretending to be someone they could love. I just couldn't do it anymore." He didn't answer right away. Then he said something that stayed with me. "You were never supposed to be what they wanted. You were supposed to be who you are." We sat on a bench, the city lights shimmering on the water. His hand brushed mine, and for the first time in years I didn't pull away. It felt simple. Right. That night after we said goodbye, I walked back to my apartment under the soft drizzle. My phone buzzed, a message from him. "You don't need to pretend anymore." Not with me. I stared at the words, and for the first time in so many years I felt peace. When I looked in the mirror that night, I didn't see the bodybuilder, the husband, or the liar. I saw the boy from the small-town gym, finally reunited with the only person who ever made him feel real. I didn't know what would happen next, whether this new freedom would last, whether I could ever return home. But I knew one thing for sure: for once I wasn't pretending to be sick. I was finally healing. The phone sat on the table like a loaded gun. I had rehearsed this call 100 times in my head. The pauses, the trembling voice, the right amount of pain to sound believable. But now that the moment had come, I couldn't breathe. My thumb hovered over her contact. Wife. That single word on the screen looked heavier than it ever had before. Armand was sitting across from me, leaning on the balcony rail. The night air brushed through his hair. He was quiet, watching the city lights, unaware of the storm building inside me. I finally pressed call. It rang twice before she answered, her voice tired but soft. "Hello, are you okay? You sound different," I swallowed, forcing my voice to tremble. "And I got the results, Sarah." A pause. Then panic in her tone. "What results? What happened?" I stared at the floor, feeling my heart tighten. The words came out like shards of glass. "They found something. In my blood." "What do you mean?" I hesitated just long enough to make it sound real. "It's cancer. Blood cancer." The silence on the other end stretched long enough to suffocate me. Then came the sound I feared most, and her sob. "Oh my God, no. No, please. You're joking, right?" I closed my eyes. I wish I was. She started crying, the kind of cry that breaks in waves, gasping, desperate. I could hear her trying to hold it back, trying to be strong. "Where are you now?" "Tell me the hospital. I'll come there. I'll be with you, through everything." Her words stabbed through me like knives. I pressed the phone to my ear, silent tears running down my face. Armand turned, concern softening his expression. I turned away. "I don't want you to see me like this," I said weakly.
"Please just
"Stay home, I'll update you. The doctors say I might need some time here." "Don't say that," she cried. "We'll fight this together. You always told me you were strong. Don't give up." I almost laughed, not out of humor, but out of despair. Strong. That word again. The armor that had trapped me all my life. "I'm trying," I whispered. "Just pray for me." We stayed on the call for a few more minutes. She kept crying softly, asking questions I couldn't answer. Finally, her voice broke into a whisper. "I love you. Please come back." "I will," I lied. "I promise." When the call ended, I stared at the phone for a long time. My hands were shaking. My chest felt hollow. Armin approached quietly, sitting beside me. "Was that her?" he asked. I nodded. My voice was hoarse. "Yeah," he hesitated. "You okay?" I wanted to tell him everything. That I'd just lied to the woman who had done nothing but try to love me. That I'd sentenced her to grief for a disease I didn't have. But I couldn't. The word stuck somewhere between my guilt and my shame. Instead, I said, "She thinks I'm dying." He frowned. "Why would you tell her that?" I looked out into the dark city. "Because in a way, I am." He didn't ask again. He just placed his hand on mine, steady, silent, forgiving. The guilt crawled deeper. I thought about Sarah sitting alone at home, clutching her phone, crying for a man who had never truly been hers. A man I'd pretended to be for too long. My throat tightened. I whispered almost to myself, "She deserves someone honest. Not a ghost." Armin didn't say anything. He just leaned in, pulling me against his chest. I resisted for a moment, then everything I'd been holding inside came pouring out. The years of pretending, the buried love, the quiet misery. I cried like I hadn't in years. My body shook, my breath breaking between sobs. Armin held me tighter, one hand cradling the back of my head. "Let it out," he murmured. "You don't have to be strong anymore," and so I did. I wept until my voice was gone, until the lies felt heavy enough to sink me completely. In that small apartment beneath the hum of the city, I realized something cruel. Sometimes lies are the only way to protect the truth. I couldn't tell Sarah who I really was, and I couldn't bear to keep living as that stranger she loved. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I vanished behind a lie, hoping it would set us both free. When the tears finally stopped, Armin brushed his thumb across my cheek. His eyes searched mine, soft, understanding, alive. In that moment, I saw two funerals. One for the man my wife believed in, strong, faithful, devoted. And one for the man I had buried deep inside me, the boy who once loved freely before shame taught him silence. As the night deepened, I whispered the truth no one would ever hear. She cried for a man who was already gone, and I cried for the man I had buried inside me. The morning after the call, sunlight spilled through the curtains like forgiveness. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to panic. There was still guilt, a thick, heavy kind. But beneath it, there was something else. Relief. Armin was in the kitchen, making coffee. He looked at me and smiled. That same soft, crooked smile he used to give me when we were kids sneaking out to the river after sunset. It had been over a decade since I'd seen it in person, but it still hit me the same way, straight through the chest. He handed me a mug. "Rough night?" I nodded. "Yeah, but I think it's over now." We sat by the window watching people rush down the street below, strangers with lives they didn't have to hide. The air was quiet, only the sound of spoons against ceramic. He broke the silence first. "Do you ever regret it? Not telling them the truth back then?" I thought for a moment. All the time. But I also know it would have destroyed them. Maybe even me. I wasn't ready to be this person yet. He nodded, his eyes soft with understanding. "We can't keep running forever, you know." His words stayed with me long after the conversation ended. We can't keep running forever. That evening we went for a walk, nothing romantic, just peaceful. The ocean wasn't far, and we sat on the rocks watching the horizon melt into gold. I told him about the years between us and the competitions, the fake smiles, the empty trophies. He told me about his own battles, how he'd tried to date women to fit in, to silence the part of him that had once belonged to me. We laughed, we cried, and somewhere in between, we found that same quiet comfort we used to have. Two souls who had always been each other's hiding place. Later that night, as rain started tapping on the windows, he pulled me close. "You don't have to prove anything anymore," he whispered. "You've done enough pretending. Just be," and so I was. For the first time, I let myself exist. Not as the bodybuilder, not as the husband, not as the son trying to please his family. Just as me. Days turned into weeks and life started to take shape again. Simple things felt new, making breakfast together, walking hand in hand through quiet streets, falling asleep beside someone who knew every scar on my soul. But one thing still weighed on me. Sarah. She deserved closure. The truth at last. One evening I sat down with a pen and paper. I didn't draft lies this time. I wrote from my heart, "Sarah, you were kind to me when I didn't deserve kindness. You loved me when I couldn't love you back. I lied to you, not because I wanted to hurt you, but because I couldn't bear to live a truth that would break us both. You did nothing wrong. The fault was mine, for not having the courage to be honest sooner. I am not sick. I never was. But I was lost, trapped in a body and a life that didn't belong to me. I found someone from my past who reminds me who I am, and I owe it to both of us to live honestly now. I hope you find peace, love, and a man who can give you everything I couldn't. A deal." I folded the letter and placed it in the envelope with the signed divorce papers. There was no relief, only quiet acceptance. When I mailed it, something inside me lifted. Not completely. Guilt doesn't disappear overnight, but enough to let me breathe again. Armand was waiting when I got home. He didn't ask what I had done. He just saw it in my face and smiled gently. "You did the right thing." We stood there for a moment in silence until he took my hand and pressed it against his chest. I could feel his heartbeat, steady, strong, real. And for the first time in years, I felt mine too. Life didn't suddenly turn perfect. The world outside our small apartment didn't change. People still whispered, still judged. But inside those walls there was truth, and that was enough. Sometimes we'd sit by the window at night, watching the rain blur the city lights, talking about building a life somewhere quiet, maybe by the sea, maybe where no one knew our names. It didn't matter where, as long as we could wake up and not have to hide. One evening he rested his head on my shoulder and said softly, "You look peaceful." I smiled. "I am. I thought freedom would feel like running away, but it felt like coming home, to him, to myself. Sometimes I still wake up before dawn, out of habit more than anything else. The old routine is still in my bones, the protein shakes, the early runs, the mirror check. But when I look at myself now, I see something different. The muscles are still there, yes, but they no longer feel like armor. They feel like me. I've learned something over the years, and love is not a choice, but truth is. And it's the truth that either saves you or slowly eats you alive. For most of my life, I thought being strong meant hiding what hurt, pretending what I felt wasn't real. But hiding doesn't heal you. It only makes the ache grow louder. It took me decades to realize that real strength isn't built in the gym. It's built in honesty. Sarah eventually found out the truth. I'd expected anger, maybe even hate. But instead, one quiet afternoon, I received a message from her. "I understand now. I forgive you. I hope you're happy. You deserve that much." That one line, "I forgive you," felt like a second chance at life. I sat for a long time just staring at her words, realizing that even the people we hurt can still offer grace when we least deserve it. I sent her a simple reply. "Thank you. I truly wish you love, the kind that fits." And with that, a chapter closed without bitterness. Just peace that Armin and I moved out of the city a year later. We opened a small gym by the coast. Nothing fancy, just a place where people come to train, to heal, to be themselves. We called it True Form Fitness, not because of the weights or the routines, but because we wanted it to be a place where people could show up as who they really are. No masks, no fear. Sometimes young men come in, shy, quiet, clearly hiding something deep. I see my old self in them, and when they finally open up, when they whisper what they can't tell anyone else, I just smile and tell them, "You're already strong, you just don't know it yet." In the evenings, when the gym closes and the sunset bleeds across the sea, Armin and I sit outside, watching the waves crash against the rocks. He still teases me about my old habits, counting macros, flexing unconsciously in mirrors, and I still laugh because now it's safe to laugh. Safe to live. Every scar, every lie, every night I spent hating myself, it all led here. To this small, honest life, to him, to freedom. Sometimes I think about that scared 20-year-old boy who just wanted to fit in, who thought loving another man made him broken. I wish I could tell him, "You're not broken. You're just becoming. And now when Armin reaches over and holds my hand, rough palms, warm grip, steady heartbeat, I realize I don't need to hide anymore. Not from the world, not from myself. For years I lifted weights to look strong, but it took telling the truth to finally be strong. And when he holds my hand now, I know I'm exactly where I was always meant to be.